I want to bring in Max Boot now. He's the senior fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations. He has a new column in the Washington Post, and he writes that while it's great that Griner is back home, the hostage bazaar has to close. John Avlon and Margaret Hoover are back with us also. So, Max, when you say the hostage bazaar has to end, meaning prisoner swaps?
Yeah, I mean, there have just been so many in recent years, and it's kind of ironic to see former President Trump and his supporters attacking this deal when Donald Trump himself bragged that he was the greatest hostage negotiator in human history.
And he made a lot of prisoner swaps.
He made a lot of prisoner swaps with the Taliban, with the Houthis, with a lot of repugnant regimes. And this has been a trend going back many years now. And, you know, the problem is in each individual case, our hearts go out to them. We want to see these Americans come home because they are being unjustly detained. The problem is when we are making all these deals, making all these concessions, including letting somebody like Victor Bout, this notorious arms dealer, out of prison to get somebody else who was unjustly detained home, it creates incentives to seize more American hostages.
I understand, but what's the option? Let Brittney Griner stay in a Russian penal colony?
No, I mean, I'm very glad that Brittney Griner is out, but I think we need to have a serious debate about whether we want to continue doing this or whether we should say, you know, the State Department has a list of countries where it advises Americans not to travel, including Russia, Iran, Syria, some of the obvious candidates. And maybe at some point we need to have a president who says, okay, I'm going to work to get the people out who are currently in prison. But in the future, if you choose to go to Russia, you are on your own. We are not going to make concessions to get you home. And by the way, I might add, there's still like 30 American basketball players who are still playing in Russia as we speak. That is not very wise. That is creating the potential for yet another hostage crisis down the road.
What I think is fascinating about it is the idea of, and some people will ask the question, that they'll say, well, and I remember when she was first detained, or we first learned about her detention, before people realized she was a basketball player there, they would make comments about, well, what's someone doing there? Of course, we learned about her during the invasion. She'd already been detained. Or questions about, this person ought not to travel this place. It's on the do not travel area. But your point really is the idea of, well, hold on. If people are intending to do it anyway, they ought not to be able to have the luxury of having the government support them and have their safe return guaranteed. What do you guys think about that?
I respectfully disagree. I understand the point that Max is making, but I think that the privileges and responsibilities of American citizenship, of a government to its citizens, don't stop simply because someone has found themselves in an unwise or dangerous place. I haven't yet seen the point that Max is making, which is that, you know, if you negotiate for one hostage, that it creates an incentive to get another dozen. Now, on the surface, obviously, trading someone whose nickname is the Merchant of Death for a WNBA star who was improperly detained is an imbalance. But American presidents, going back decades, as Max points out, have made it a priority to try to get Americans out of harm's way. That's a basic responsibility of the government and the president. And the fact that she was being used as a pawn within the context of the run-up to the invasion of Ukraine. Paul Whelan still is there. He should be released. But I think we need to celebrate as Americans. What we need to avoid is the kind of situational ethics we see, where Republicans who celebrated every hostage released by Donald Trump condemn this one as making America weaker. It does not make us weaker.
Well, no, I mean, I agree with you. There is massive hypocrisy on the part of Republicans here. There's no way around that. But I think at the end of the day, there is a legitimate point that these hostage swaps do make us weaker. The problem is both parties have done it. It's a bipartisan problem.
Yeah. Margaret, what do you think?
What do you do? I mean, I am willing to give a lot of leeway to the people who are in the negotiations and who have the intelligence, who know the details about what was being offered between Brittney and Paul Whelan. I'm delighted that she's home. Of course, we've been following it. But I recall President Trump swapped many dozens of Taliban prisoners, which struck me as an outrage at the time in order to get Americans back. But you're right, there is this precedent for American presidents doing what they can in order to get Americans back. I was struck, frankly, that her statement, that she took time in her statement to update the country about how she was, but then to also make note of Paul Whelan, who is still there in Russia. And there has been a degree of criticism about him being left behind and some commentary about that. I wasn't part of the negotiation.
But I mean, basically,
I don't know.
It's not like Biden wanted to
does
be.
No, I mean, there's a lot of opportunism there, obviously, because, I mean, everybody wants Paul Whelan home, but he was captured in 2018 when Donald Trump was president, and now Trump and others are suggesting that Biden did something wrong by not getting him out. Well, why didn't Trump get him out in the first place?
Yeah, great point.